What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Fireside Giants podcast brought to you by Empire Sports Media, covering all things New York Giants. And today we do have a bit of news to talk about. Joe Schoen, the new general manager of the Giants, got pretty active this week, clearing up some cap space with the restructuring of contracts to both Blake Martinez and Sterling Shepard, two players that we thought could have been cut or traded some point this offseason. They're going to come back in 2022 under reworked contracts, and Joe Schoen has done a phenomenal job reworking these contracts in a way that clears up cap space for the Giants this year, but also doesn't put them onto another tightrope next year, which is something that Dave Gettleman did. So Blake Martinez has had his contract restructured in the past, and that's ultimately why the Giants were in such a sticky situation with his contract this year. But Joe Schoen was able to work it out with Blake Martinez. They've been talking all week, and today they finally came to an agreement on a reworked contract that has now saved the Giants $6 million in cap space with Blake Martinez's reworked deal. So the Giants came into this offseason at about 12, 11 million over the salary cap. And after all of these moves, the restructuring of Shepard, restructuring of Martinez, of course, the cutting of Devontae Booker, Riley Dixon, and even Caden Smith. The Giants have made a lot of cuts so far. The tight end position, we'll talk about that, has been completely shred apart. But the Giants have saved about $25 million in cap space with these moves. And really, they just have one more move left, one major move left to work out before the new league year on Wednesday. And that is the move of James Bradberry. James Bradberry is very likely to be traded at this point. The Giants have been shopping him around. They've been calling teams because they need to move that contract and clear up some cap space. But it's not impossible for James Bradberry to come back next year, as we saw with the restructuring of Shepard, restructuring of Blake Martinez. The Giants could absolutely work something out with James Bradberry, restructure his contract and clear up some cap space while also keeping him on the roster, because that's exactly what they did with Sterling Shepard. They cleared about $6 million with the Sterling Shepard restructure and about $6 million with the Blake Martinez restructuring. These are both great moves by Joe Schoen, the new general manager of the Giants. He has done a phenomenal job managing the salary cap space that he invested, or he inherited a real mess of the salary cap from Dave Gettleman, and he has done a good job clearing up some space. Of course, Joe Schoen said his goal was to clear about $40 million in salary cap space. Now, they've cleared $25 million, and I think if you net that with the 11, quick maths right here, that's about $14 million in total that they have now, 25 minus 11. But that means that they have a whole lot more to do before they get to that 40 million mile mark. And I'm not exactly sure if they can reach that without, making some serious moves like a trade for James Bradberry, and maybe even Saquon Barkley might have to get thrown into those conversations as well if they're very serious about reaching that 40 million cap space mark. But right now, the Giants have cleared a good amount of money, and they're going to continue to make these moves. So what Joe Schoen did is really interesting, though, with the Blake Martinez contract. This is an article from Jordan Rannon we'll dive into, and he mentions how, they cut Kyle Rudolph, Caden Smith, Devontae Booker, and Riley Dixon. And so with that, plus everything else that they've done with these restructures, they have shed close to $25 million. So as Jordan Rannon points out, Martinez is 28, was set to make $8.5 million on the final year of his contract, coming off of this ACL tear that he suffered in the second week of the season in 2021. He would have counted $14 million against the salary cap this year if they kept him on his current contract. But they're expected to save about $6 million by restructuring this contract. Jordan Rannon reports that Martinez wanted to remain with New York, despite the fact that, new coaching staff, new regime, everything like that. Blake Martinez, that's surprising to me in some way because he came over here to work with Patrick Graham. And Patrick Graham did leave to go to Las Vegas. Now we've got a new defensive coordinator coming in. Obviously, it's Wink Martindale. Not 100% sure how Blake Martinez is going to fit into that, but clearly he sees the vision. He thinks that this is a place for him to stay, and he wanted to remain with the Giants, and that's ultimately why they got this deal reworked. So the contract was restructured for cap purposes last season to move $3.5 million of dead money into this year. And that's what made this contract so difficult and made it need to be restructured once again. But of course, we all know Blake Martinez, phenomenal player. He's played 6 seasons with the Giants and Packers in his career. He started 76 of 80 career games. He's always been out there making tackles. He was the tackle leader in the NFL in 2017, I believe. And we all know Blake Martinez, great personality off the field, a great guy. And he's also been a very impactful player wearing the captain's patch for the Giants defense. He's been great as a run defender, and he's really just been, one of the better linebackers in the NFL since he joined the Giants. So definitely a good move by the Giants here. Happy to see Blake Martinez returning for the 2022 season, and very happy that they were able to clear up some cap space in the process. But of course, Sterling Shepard, this is a player that we felt pretty certain like the Giants were going ahead and move on from this offseason. Shepard has really struggled to stay healthy in the past. He tore his Achilles at the end of this last season. He might miss some of the upcoming regular season because that's how bad an injury like that can be, especially when suffered midway through the year, not at the beginning of the year. So for Sterling Shepard, it's kind of one of those things where he's always been really good. And in fact, in the first 3 weeks of this past season, he looked like one of the best receivers in the NFL, and he was doing a phenomenal job until he got injured. Then he comes back and he just got injured again. And that's kind of been the story of Sterling Shepard for the past few years. Really productive and efficient when he's on the field, but he just can't stay on the field. So, of course, the Giants had to make a move here. They couldn't continue to pay Sterling Shepard at the dollar amount that he was on, considering how frequently he's been injured and how difficult it's been for him to stay on the field. So dive into Jordan Rannon's article on Sterling Shepard as well. Reworked on a 1-year deal, so he'll be here one more time for the 2022 season. He was previously signed through 2023, but they dropped the final year of the contract. He was originally set to make $8.5 million in the 2022 season, but he suffered that injury and they had to change course of plans. Shepard was scheduled to count $12.495 million against the salary cap this season on a deal that had 2 years remaining. This new deal is expected to significantly lower that number. The cap-strapped Giants would have saved only $4.5 million if Shepard was cut after moving money into future years, but instead, they did not cut him to only save $4.5 million. They kept him on a rework deal, got rid of the final year of his contract, and they saved around $6 million instead. So again, very clever stuff from Joe Schoen, giving him that reworked contract, making this the final year of his deal, and also saving a bunch of money in the process. And it's just a job very well done by Joe Schoen, brilliantly restructuring these contracts and saving $12 million right here alone on these two moves, which is just phenomenal. $6 million from Shep, $6 million from Blake Martinez. Really great job there by Joe Schoen, freeing up some cap space ahead of the 2022 offseason and free agency period, which starts on Wednesday. And I can't wait to dive into all of the potential free agents that the Giants could consider this offseason right here on Fireside Giants. So stay tuned. But before we wrap this video up, I want to give my thoughts on the tight end position for the New York Giants. Obviously, Evan Engram is a free agent, and he seems to have a pretty big market. There's some teams that want to sign him, potentially as a slot receiver even. So he might go out there and get a lot of money, and that's going to surprise Giants fans because we like to crap on Evan Engram all the time. He's got the bad case of the drops, and he just has not been what we expected him to be when he was drafted. But other teams might look at him and say, we can turn him into what he was expecting, and we can fix him as a player. So he's definitely going to have a big market. I don't imagine that the Giants are going to go ahead and re-sign Evan Engram at the price point that he's going to be commanding. So, of course, Evan Engram, moving on. Caden Smith was just cut by the Giants as well. There's concerns that his knee injury could have potentially been career-ending, so the Giants had to do what they had to do, had to move on from him, save some cap space there. And, of course, Kyle Rudolph also released by the Giants. So who's playing tight end for the Giants this year? That's a big question. This has now become quickly one of the biggest needs on the Giants roster entering this offseason period. So take a look at some players in free agency. Hayden Hurst is one to keep an eye on. Used to play with the Baltimore Ravens. Of course, now we have our tight ends coach as a former Baltimore Ravens tight ends coach. So connection there. Keep an eye on Hayden Hurst as a free agent. And then also the 2022 NFL draft. The Giants have a lot of picks in the middle rounds. A lot of good tight ends have come out of the middle rounds in recent years. Dawson Knox for the Buffalo Bills, drafted by Joe Schoen, is one name that comes to mind. And I think that the Giants will absolutely be placing an emphasis on the tight end position and finding their guy in the middle rounds of this year's draft. So definitely something to keep an eye on. Really interesting that right now the Giants basically don't have any tight ends on their roster that are healthy and able to play, but we'll see what they do in free agency. Of course, we'll keep you updated on all of that news at the tight end position, offensive line, and everywhere else as the news continues to trickle in throughout this offseason. It's going to be really exciting. Can't wait to dive into all this content for you guys right here on the Fireside Giants podcast. So make sure to subscribe if you're new, ring a bell so you don't miss a video, leave a like if you enjoyed, and of course, engage in the comment section. What do you think of Joe Schoen's moves here, freeing up cap space with Blake Martinez and Sterling Shepard contract restructures? Let me know what you think, and who do you want the Giants to sign or draft at the tight end position in 2022? Let me know down in the comment section below. Have a great one, and let's go Giants.